Continue to try and figure that out, but I don't want to delay our meeting anymore. It looks like we've got Byron, Tia, and Amy. I know that Gloria will be on shortly, and I know Celeste will be on, but she may be just running a little bit late. Oh, there's Zainab.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Zainab.
How's everybody? I guess it's cold. It's not warm yet, but how's everybody doing? I hope it's not still snowing.
Gosh.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Byron, do you feel comfortable once I start recording?
Yes, please.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and start.
Recording in progress.
Okay. Can everybody hear me good enough?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening and welcome to the PCCEP meeting of April 21, 2022. We are here today for the intro. I would like to introduce all the PCCEP members. So my name is Byron Vaughn, PCCEP member since August of 2021. I help out with the youth subcommittee and I'm on the behavioral health subcommittee. I'll go with Ann Campbell.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Ann Campbell. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a PCCEP member, and I am going to pass it to Amy.
Good evening, everyone. Amy Anderson here, Chair of the Behavioral Health Subcommittee. And I'm going to pass it to Zainab.
Thanks, Amy. Zainab Folk. I have the wrong name up. Just realized that there's just too much going on right now. I meant to share with everyone. I'm only going to be here until what's time? 6 o'clock. I have too many competing meetings today, back to back. Sorry about that. And I am the Settlement Agreement and Policy Subcommittee Chair. Thank you.
I want to add in real quick. When we introduce ourselves, can you briefly share why you joined PCCEP? And I forgot that part. I'm sorry.
Hello. I'm gonna pass it on to Tia, and then she can start. Thanks.
Okay. My name is Tia Palafox. I'll change my married name on the picture there. I'm a member of the Behavioral Health Subcommittee for PCCEP, and I joined PCCEP when I was feeling really frustrated with the excessive use of force during the 2020 protests and wanting to make a positive impact on my community. And my pronouns are she, her. Okay, let's see. I'll pass it on to Jared.
I'm not a PCCEP member, so I will pass it to Ann Campbell's top of my screen.
Hey again, everyone. I think I didn't say why I joined PCCEP in 2020. It was because I wanted all Portlanders to feel safe when they're pulled over by the police or questioned by the police. And I didn't want my experience as a white woman to be different of that for a person of color.
I joined. I was brought to PCCEP through Facebook. Actually, I was on Donna Hayes' page, and she was doing a dedication to Quanice Hayes, and she spoke about, or she presented the mayor's 19 points and talked about PCCEP. And so I was coming to PCCEP to hear her and to listen to see what was happening. And well, she didn't make it to the meeting, but I wind up engaging. Let's just say that I engaged, and then I applied, and I became a member in November. But as someone who grew up in Portland, and there's been a lot of things happening lately. But 2020, everything that was going on then, I think just really had me really thinking and being able to reflect more than I had previously. So thank you for that question, Byron.
Yes, I believe it's Celeste here.
Can you hear me now, Byron?
Yes, we can, Celeste.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I know we're giving our name and we're also explaining why we joined PCCEP. Is that correct? Hello.
Yes.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Celeste Carey. I am the chair of the Racial Equity Subcommittee. I joined PCCEP, I believe it was May of 2021, I think. And I was invited by some community members and former co-workers because of my work with community and building relationships with the public and the police. And so I thought it would be a good opportunity to help Portland overcome some of its historic challenges with racial tensions in the community, as well as in general, better relating to Portlanders and having a shared and mutually respected vision of community safety, as well as being able to set up some mutual accountability and some goals for mutual goals for community safety. And is that it, Byron? Is there anything else?
No, ma'am, that was it. Just
All right.
why you joined. Thank you very
Yes.
much, Celeste.
All right, thanks, Byron.
Amy Anderson, did she go? I'm not sure.
No, I haven't yet, Byron. Thanks for asking.
Please.
What?
Please.
Well, I actually was invited to join PCCEP by this gentleman, Brad Taylor, who worked for the city, and he was organizing the original PCCEP. And he was part of the subcommittee that I was chairing. And so because of all my interest in the jails and interest in people coming and going, you know, having a lot of negative interactions with the officers, and then learning that James Chassie had died in the jail when I was chaplain there and doing work there. So I was really empowered, wanting to make a difference in the community with everyone that had negative interactions with officers and were getting hurt and killed. That's why I joined PCCEP.
Thank you, Amy Anderson, for that. Gloria,
Hello, and hello, PCCEP members.
hello.
My name is Gloria Canson. I use she, her pronouns. I joined PCCEP because I was concerned about family members, and I was concerned about giving back to my community. I was introduced to PCCEP by Ann Campbell, and we remained friends then, and I hope after PCCEP we can still remain friends. Chuckle.
Chuckle.
All right, Ann. Okay.
That's a good one.
I know.
Okay. I want to say my piece. I'm Byron Vaughn. I was here since August of 2021. The reason why I joined because I felt, as everybody else, there was a need for a change in the African American community. A lot of promises that were never filled. So hopefully I can be that person to be able to bridge that gap for the community and have it prosper. And with that said, Gloria, are you ready to speak on the Youth Speak Out?
I am.
Please.
I am. Okay. For those of you who participated and for those of you who supported us, let me start off by saying thank you, thank you, thank you. To speak out, we had 4 youth who signed up, and Helen's View brought 7 youth with them. And out of the 7 that they bought, there's a possibility that 2 might become PCEP subcommittee members, youth subcommittee members. We had a few glitches, but I'm not going to dwell on the glitches. I would like to talk about what was good. And what was good was the fact that we had Nike Green there as our keynote speaker, and she was outstanding. She kind of gave us a roadmap of what we should look forward to for the summer. And as she said, her summer has already started. So they're working on plans for the youth right now. So I was glad that she was there. And we had Myron Marion from the police department's EOC. He did an icebreaker, which was it was fun. We enjoyed it. And I think that the youth enjoyed it as well. We have 2 youth who want to participate in PCEP, and I've already mentioned them to Stephanie, but they're 15 years old. I originally told them no, because the age was 16 to 18. But then I had to step back on that. And I said, well, by the time they're 16, maybe we will have gotten to their application and they can become a member of the youth team. So I'm going to contact them again and let them know that there is an opportunity for them within PCEP Youth Subcommittee. I couldn't have pulled this off hadn't it have been for Tia and Byron and Zainab and the members of PCEP who supported us, like Amy and Barb who were there. I want to thank you. I want to thank you so much. Now, before I go any further, we're going to do a debriefing, and we have not selected our date for the debriefing, but there are committee members here who helped. So I'd like for them to have their say, if you don't mind. We can start with Zainab. Observations? Yes, come on.
All right.
Okay.
Well, of course, my observations, and it was probably my doing, is I wasn't paying attention to the time. I really got so in the zone of doing my presentation that I forgot I only had 5 minutes, and my 5 minutes turned to 15. And so that was my own observation. I really got really involved in that. In that, just the dialogue is, I miss that kind of dialogue, being able to have that with the community, engage with the conversation, even in chat, and that stayed busy, and even in the conversation, and just drawing in the youth who were there. Can we say their names?
Those that yeah.
So Anthony and Leilani, I really appreciated their participation, their active participation. And also, I kept calling him Professor, but Jeff, just being that engaged teacher, coach, whatever you want to call it. I think that's just a wonderful thing. And I really appreciated PCEP members also being there to support the youth speak out. I thought that was amazing. That's my observation. I thought that was amazing. Everyone being there too. And so that's what you're looking for?
Yes.
I was actually reading the plan real quick. So trying to do the other things. All right. Thank you.
Byron.
Yes.
Did you want to add anything?
Yeah, it was a beautiful thing.
I thought so.
The children, they felt a little timid, and me being how I am, I wanted to say a little more, and they will, because we're going to keep bringing them back, and
yes.
Hopefully they can bring some people who have gone through what they have to bring in more experience, because I would love to hear what they have to say.
Good outreach on your part too. And I know Tia probably isn't here, but is she on phone? Are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Good. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
I don't really think on record I should say that I just had anesthesia, but I'm doing the best I can through having surgery today. But I'm focused. I'm here.
Good.
Yes. For me, being on the, I was a facilitator on the suicide and suicide prevention topic. And I feel very confident around that area and have spoken to youth for years around suicide and done intervention and prevention. And I felt a little flustered because I wanted to talk with youth faces in front of me. And I felt like I was talking to a lot of adults and was, anyway, so I got a little flustered by not seeing the youth faces in front of me that I was hoping for, but I think it'll grow. And I think it was a really great start. And I really enjoyed Nike's presentation and the little that we heard from New Avenues for Youth, New Day program regarding sex trafficking.
Mm-hmm. Good. Good. That's it, Byron. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any questions or comments or anybody have suggestions?
Amy might have had something to say. I'm sorry, Amy.
Yeah.
Amy was on the bus.
Yeah, I definitely, when I'm working and I'm out in the community, I love listening to really good presentations. And I'm an audio person, so the video wasn't that important, but boy, your speakers were incredible. I was really enjoying all the information from everyone.
So was I.
And I just wish there could have been more youth able to stay for more of the presentations. It was like I felt like they were rushed. And weren't they all like, were they in a group in a room or something?
Yeah, they were in a classroom. There was Jeff's classroom. His students. Okay. So
Can
they
I say
had
something?
other classes. Yeah.
I did look up because that's what I looked them up. And his class is only for an hour from 12 to 1. And so I guess we didn't really know that. And so, that would have been helpful. Because if we could adjust it a little bit more just for their time. But yeah, I thought it was incredible too. Thanks.
I think we should have another opportunity to focus around their voices in a similar, engagement opportunity. I think that was great.
We want to do a follow-up, so we'll see.
Okay.
Hopefully we'll have the help.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, Byron.
Did we get everybody?
I think so, except Barb, and she was there, but.
Well, yeah. Please, Barb, would you like to say something?
Sure, this is so sweet. I'm almost like a PCCEP member. Barbara, your pronouns, PCCEP groupie, member of the Behavioral Health Subcommittee. I thought it was really great. I always like to hear Nike Green talk, and I thought there were some really good connections made there. And I thought it was really great that the students that were there were participating. And I wonder if it's something that you could target. This is just a brainstorming, whatever, because I don't know if I'm invited to the debrief or if I'll be available.
Yeah.
But target particular schools and their classroom for single events.
That's a good idea.
Like that, so that we're still going to them, and it would be more work on our part, your part, whatever, the adults' part, the PCCEP, versus expecting everyone to come to the Zoom meeting at the time that you try to make it so that everybody can come, because you can never win that way, right? I thought it was great, and I thought it should be done more often. How about that?
Thank you.
And thank you to everybody who planned it and pulled it off. You were wonderful.
Yes, you were. Thank you for inviting me, Gloria. And thank you for that, Barb. Okay. I guess we're gonna move, discuss the 429 fairness hearing. I'm not too sure who I'm supposed to pass that off to. I don't have the agenda up. I have a little,
Hi, Byron. It's Heidi Brown, and I think I'm going to start with that. Jared can jump in if that's okay.
Jared?
This is Heidi.
Sure.
I was going to start off, and Jared would jump in as well, if that's all right with you, Byron.
Yes, please.
Great. So my name's Heidi Brown. I use she, her pronouns. I'm with the city attorney's office. And we have our fairness hearing on April 29th. The fairness hearing is for the court to consider whether the amendments to the settlement agreement between the United States and the city of Portland are fair, reasonable, and adequate. And so I know PCCEP voted on supporting the amendments last July. I know Jared and I presented in January and talked more in depth about each of the amendments. And we'll go over them again at the fairness hearing. We can also post them, I'm sure, if anybody wants to look at them tonight. But the fairness hearing will start off with the United States presenting first. Well, actually, the court is going to talk first. The judge always talks first. So the judge is first, and then the United States, and then the city of Portland. After the city of Portland is the Portland Police Association, because they are third-party interveners, meaning they have a party, somewhat of a party status in the case, so they're next. After that is the Albina Ministerial Alliance Coalition for Peace and Justice. And after that is the Mental Health Association. Following the Mental Health Association will be the COCO, the Compliance Officer and Community Liaison. And then we set aside time for the PCCEP if you would like to present. So that's something maybe for you to consider tonight, and let us know if you'd like to have somebody speak to the court on your behalf. I think it's something you'd all need to support. But alternatively, after that time, then there's the whole rest of the day is available for members of the public to share their perspectives. And so PCCEP members you can vote to have one person speak on your behalf as a group, and you are also welcome to speak individually on your own behalf. So you can do either one. And if anybody needs information about how to sign up, I know we've posted that before. We'll do that again tonight for you. And you just can reach out to the judicial clerk, and they'll get your name on the list to sign up. If you need to do it remotely, if you want to come in person, you're just welcome to come in person, and then you will go up and just share your thoughts about the settlement agreement with the court. So the hearing on April 29th is focused on the amendments, and then subsequently we will have, normally we have a status conference once a year. I'm sure the court will set that probably shortly thereafter. So that's another opportunity for people to hear and share their perspectives on how the city has done in 2021 in meeting the requirements of the settlement agreement. That's it for the agenda for the April 29th hearing. If there's any questions about it, please let me know, let Sarah know, let Stephanie know, and we're happy to answer those. And you can also reach out to us after the PCCEP meeting if you have other questions and you don't think of them until later. Thanks, everyone. Jared, was there anything I missed that you want to add?
Thanks, Heidi. I think I'd welcome any questions, but I did want to underscore that this hearing is about the resolution of our notice of noncompliance, which was filed in April of 2021. And so the 8 remedies are new remedies for the settlement agreement, paragraphs 188 to 195. And I copied a Word document of them into the chat so you can pull that. Some of the more, publicized remedies are body-worn cameras for officers who interact with the public, a dean to be over the training division to lead the educational aspects of Portland Police Bureau's training, and a way to codify the new accountability system that the voters approved and the city is working on presently. And so those are the big three. There are 8 of them, and I copied them into the chat. I'm going to also copy the proposed agenda, which Dan asked about. But if you have any questions, happy to answer them. Again, I wanted to underscore that this hearing is about the fairness of those remedies. Later this summer, I expect we'll have a hearing on the status of compliance after the United States files its next compliance assessment report, which we're looking at probably the May timeframe. It could slip into June, depending on how busy our leadership is, because they have to review and approve any filing. And a month after that is when we'll have the annual status conference. So that'll be an opportunity to speak about anything. And you can speak about anything next Friday as well, but the purpose of this hearing on next Friday is to see if this resolution is fair for the non-compliance we found in 2020. So with that, I'll just leave it to any questions that anyone has. I see a couple hands up.
Yes, I do. We have, I'm not sure what order, but Zainab, I'm gonna go with you, Barb, and then Dan Handelman. I seen you had a question in the chat, so forgive me if I
Actually, it's
didn't get it in
Barb is
order.
first. Barb is first.
Okay, then please.
It's in order
Okay.
of the screen thing.
Okay, please, Barb.
Thank you. My question, I think part of it will be answered when you answer Dan's questions, but my initial question is reading through not very far into the addendum, but noticing that there's lots of dates that the city's asked to comply by and timelines put out, and then little riffs, little comments that, you know, if the city's working in the right direction, those can be moved or adjusted. How and when do we find out where the city is in along that timeline? Does that make sense?
Yeah, Barb, one thing I could recommend, Sarah, I don't know if you have our filing and if we could put a link to it in the chat. So the parties were invited by the court to file documents with the court discussing whether they were in support of the motion to amend the settlement agreement. And so the Department of Justice filed something, the city filed something, and the AMAC the MHA, the Mental Health Association, filed a document. And the AMAC is intending to file something. I believe they got an additional extension of time to submit their filing. So in the city's filing, we discussed the steps that we've taken so far, because some of the dates, as you might notice, have already passed. But we have been working to hit those target dates already, since we had already worked through those terms with the DOJ. So for example, the dean position, the academic dean position, that position was supposed to post in January. We did that. And so we're moving along that process. I think many of you may know there were interviews this week. Then there'll be second interviews with the mayor and the chief, and it'll keep moving along. So from the city's perspective, we are already working hard on all the terms and conditions that are in the settlement agreement. The amendments to the settlement agreement. And Barb, if we can get the filing up for you, that will tell you what we've done so far.
And I'd just like to add, Barb, if Section 11 is approved by the court, the United States, the Department of Justice will assess compliance with that on a roughly annual basis, and then we'll present our assessment in court. And that's the place where I think we would assess how the city is doing if and when those become obligations. And in addition to the Department of Justice, the compliance officer, community liaison, the COCO, and I see Dennis is here, they report quarterly on the city's progress. And so if these amendments are approved, you would get a quarterly report out from the compliance officer on how they're doing. And that's where, to the extent timelines come and go or are in danger of not being met, you would hear that from them on a little more regular basis. And the third thing I would add is at PCEP meetings, you could always ask about a status, of compliance and how things are going, and whether in the settlement agreement and policy subcommittee or some other, full meeting or whatever, you could get information in a more real-time fashion that way. But I just want to underlay all of that with the notion that, those timelines are, meant to encourage the city to make progress, and they've already made fantastic progress, even though this is, not yet an obligation, and we're quite encouraged by their commitment there. So, the timelines do have some flexibility built into them, and whether the United States would rush to enforce, I mean, that's a less realistic option than, meeting and conferring and trying to help the city along as they make their deliberate effort to meet those obligations. So I hope that answers your question.
It almost does. I think when I read what Heidi talked about and see the date on it,
I'm not sure if you're finished, Barb, but I just want to echo what you were just sharing. And I was the same way when it came to, I'm just trying to make sure I'm understanding, because it's been so much happening between, I want to say April maybe is when you first introduced it to the court last year. Just want to make sure, because by November, I know we were focusing on body worn camera. Well, no, not until January. But at the same time, you had deadlines, as Barb mentioned, for November, which was kind of threw a lot of things off to understanding what's happening. And then on top of that, if this space, PCEP, is the space, or are there other spaces where the city talks about the settlement agreement and gives updates, because it's not often in this space and it's not often kept track of in this space. So meaning the question is, for me, has the person from the training been hired?
Answer is not yet, but
Okay.
First round of interviews happened this week. So so that is moving along, and I don't know when the second round of interviews with the mayor and the chief will be scheduled, but I know we're trying to move that along so that we can ideally hire somebody by this summer, or during this summer.
And so, I mean, I'm really trying to make sure I don't dominate this meeting. I'm just trying to get everything in before I have to leave by 6 o'clock. I just know that there's been a lot of spaces where we've asked a lot of questions along the way. And your word, I'm quoting you, Jared, they've done a fantastic job. That word, I'm not sure how we're measuring that word. Fantastic. And what does that mean to DOJ? When it comes to fantastic, how does that measure in regards to compliance, a substantial compliance, non-compliance? But at this moment, the fairness hearing, I'm trying to get this understanding, is to approve or to see if what you said, or DOJ offered as remedies, were fair. And is the city, what's that word? Are you going against? Are you in? Okay, there's nothing that you're not. What's the word? You're the attorney. What's
opposing?
The word?
Yeah, we're not opposing anything.
You're not opposing anything.
Correct. We are supporting the amendments that the Department of Justice proposed, and the way that we've worded them, working through them with all the other parties during the mediation.
And Zainab, I would like to address your point about the fantastic. I don't want to be misunderstood. All of Section 11, the 8 remedies, they're not obligations yet. I couldn't enforce them if I wanted to. The court has to approve them before they become obligations on the city to perform. And from my perspective, when I say fantastic, we have 8 remedies that are not obligations yet, and the city's already performing them. And so they're required to do none of it at this point, and they've done some of it. In fact, they've done a decent amount in terms of allocating more than $500,000, probably over $1 million in terms of body-worn cameras, the outside entity looking at the 2020 crowd control response, the dean, so they have performed when they're not obliged to. And to me, that is a real good show of faith, and obliged in the legal sense of the word. I see your reaction.
Yes,
And-
because I
and
know that this has been going on for, I'm sorry, I put Ann Campbell out there as former SAP chair, but there has been meetings, countless of meetings about training. That's been, I mean, we're still at this point finding that there still needs to be someone who's actually managing that area of the city. And so I'm not here to like debate with anyone. I'm just realizing a lot of legalese, I guess I would say a lot of legalese here that I didn't understand was a part of PCCEP, to be honest with you, until now. I think Gloria pointed out, you know, one of our meetings, we have a lot of attorneys, a lot of attorneys in this space. And I also understand, you know, there's deadlines in 6 months and a year, you know, but people are still suffering and people are still going through a lot. And so, and one thing I will continue to say, I do not see the police represented as much at our meetings. And so as I'm reading the quote unquote PCCEP plan, and we're gonna go into that next, I just wanna see how does that PCCEP plan also fall in line with the fairness hearing and also fall in line with the compliance of oversight and accountability when it comes to Portland Accountability Commission. So there's a lot of questions here, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
So Zainab, just I would say that for the fairness hearing, that is focused, as Jared said, on those amendments that we talked about, you know, the body cameras, the dean, the investigation into lieutenants and above on training that was given. So all those pieces that are in there, there's more, but the accountability, the oversight board, all those pieces are obligations that if the court finds that the amendments are fair, reasonable, and adequate, which the judge will decide after hearing from all the parties, the amici, and anyone from the community, and the PCCEP, and the COPOL, anyone who wants to share their perspective with the court should come to that hearing. Or I think, Sarah, I just want to put a plug for this. If anybody needs to appear by phone or by Zoom, you need to let the court clerk know by Friday, which is tomorrow. So the court clerk's email address is in the chat. And if anybody needs us to put it back in there again, we can put it back in there again. But please reach out if you're trying to appear either by phone or virtually. If you're going to come in person, you don't need to worry about it. But if you're not, please get a hold of the clerk. And if anybody, any PCCEP member, I think you all have our email addresses, mine, Sarah's. You can email us, and we can email the court for you as well. Yeah, Zainab.
There's a date in there that I want you to look at, Stephanie, because I'm not sure if that's a correct date. And so that's all of you to say, because that's not the date that I was told about written comments. And so I just want to make sure the community is aware of the right, correct information. If that is the correct information, please just correct me. Thank you.
No, I'm sorry. So if you want to appear and actually give your own testimony by phone or on Zoom, then we need to get your name to the court by tomorrow, by the end of the day tomorrow. But you still can submit written testimony up until April 26th, which is next week. So we have 2 dates that the court gave us. One is tomorrow, if you want to come yourself and speak personally to the court. And then the other is if you just want to provide written testimony, you're just writing out what you want to share, the information you want to share with the court, and the court and all of us will read that. Then you can do that as long as you get it into the court by April 26th. Thank you for asking that, Zainab, because those are 2 different dates. So I appreciate you asking that and clarifying it.
Yes, Zainab has some very good questions. Not good, but they were great questions. And it sounded like nobody was really able to answer any of them. And then we still have to wait after what happens after everybody agrees, and then what happens after that. So there's a long ways to go, it feels like. Dan Handelman, you had a question, please.
Oh, hi. Yeah, well, my original question sort of got answered, that it looks like there's a large chunk of time for the parties to give their briefs on these amendments before there's a break, and then the community gets to start talking at the earliest at 10:45. And then there's a 2-hour chunk, there's a lunch break, and there's more in the afternoon. But I don't know if Judge Simon has yet set time limits for the general public who might want to testify next Friday. So I'm hoping that somebody will let us know once that is known. I also just wanted to point out that, there was a question in the chat, I think it was from former Chair Campbell, about the specifics. So the judge had originally said there was not going to be any virtual aspect to this hearing, and that everybody who's required to come in has to have proof of vaccination, and they have to wear a mask, which is all well and good. But some people in the community still don't want to go into crowded places, even if everybody's vaccinated and is wearing a mask. So we at Portland Cop Watch, I'm sorry, I forgot I had my camera on. I'm leaning over to my phone. We at Portland Cop Watch asked for a virtual aspect to be added, and that's why there is one now. And that, unfortunately, you have to sign up by tomorrow, as the City Attorney Brown has said a few times. And then the Legal Women Voters wrote in and said that the original deadline for written comments, which was going to be the 15th, was way too soon for community groups to get it together. So the judge extended that to the 26th. So this is some of your fans, some of your fan club, doing work to help the community get involved more, because this is the fairness hearing is specifically so the judge can hear from the community. So it's really important that if people are going to go in person next week, that they understand all those restrictions. And you also have to show an ID at the door. You have to go through a metal detector and things like that. But also, if they want to sign up for the virtual one, they have to do it by tomorrow. And I imagine that means by the close of business day tomorrow. And just as a preview of what Portland Cop Watch is probably going to say, in general, these amendments are not adequate because the city seems to not be able to keep up with all the things they're already supposed to be doing in the existing agreement. And it seems like there'd be a lot more that was going to be needed to be done to do in order to make things continue. And I'm very glad that the PCCEP is still meeting, which would have been yet another thing where the city would have completely out of compliance if you had been suspended. So that's just my commentary on the fairness hearing for next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan Handelman, for that. That was very nice. Thank you, Ann Campbell. Then Sarah, I'm sorry, or both of you guys, I'm not sure, but Ann Campbell.
Thank you. I'm just seeing Heidi answered my question. I just wanted to put the specifics of where and when the court date is next Friday, in case people in the community would like to attend. That's all. Thank you. And thanks.
Also, speak about it on the camera so people are listening. Just because we don't have any we don't have that right now. Thank you.
And while Heidi types it into the chat, I can let you know. I mean, my workplace is in the courthouse. So the hearing is going to be held beginning at 9 a.m. in the federal courthouse. That's at 1000 Southwest 3rd Avenue. It's in between Main and Salmon on 3rd Street. To enter the courthouse, you will need photo ID. You cannot bring weapons. So leave your weapons, bring your photo ID, and you have to go through a metal detector. So the Marshal Service, keeps a tight ship on security there. There's no way around those requirements. So apologize for that. Once you get into the courthouse, you'll go to the north side, which is a left as you come in through the metal detectors. And the elevators will take you to the 15th floor. That's where Judge Simon's courtroom is. If you forget this, there are screens in the lobby that tell you what's happening in each of the courtrooms. And so you'll see in courtroom 15B is Judge Simon's courtroom, and there'll be a hearing in the case of United States v. City of Portland, and that's where you want to go. There's also an overflow courtroom that will be in 15A, I believe, where you can go if all the seats are taken up in the main courtroom. Outside of the courtroom, right before you enter on the 15th floor, is typically a sign-up desk with one of Judge Simon's clerks who will take your name for testimony. There is a dedicated time for PCCEP testimony, but if you want to testify to the court as a individual with your views, just give your name to the person sitting there at the table. There will be a time during the break and at the lunch hour where you could also sign up. While Dan is correct that we proposed 2-hour chunks right before lunch and right after lunch for the community to testify or to give their opinion, We've also noted that if that's not enough time, we're going to defer to the court on whether it wants to extend time or invite recorded statements to be submitted after the hearing or written statements after the hearing. So Judge Simon is usually really good about hearing from members of the public. In the past, he's asked for people to keep their comments brief, but I don't think he's ever imposed any strict timeline. And Dan might know better than me because he's always presenting his views on behalf of Portland Cop Watch. So I think that covers everything. 9 a.m., 1000 Southwest 3rd. Bring your ID because people have gotten turned away if they don't have photo ID. And the 15th floor once you get in. And always happy to answer questions. If you forget, you can email me the day of or whatever. You can call me.
I had a question maybe for either Jared or Dan. The court's orders were not quite clear whether people who just wanted to listen in could call in or, watch a video feed. It sounded like that was an option for people who wanted to give testimony, but it wasn't clear whether they would be publicizing that. Has either of you figured that out?
I haven't heard that they're publicizing it, but I know last time what they asked people to do is if you just wanted to listen, you would phone in. And if you actually wanted to give testimony, you would you would appear via Zoom. I think this time they're offering folks to provide testimony by phone or by Zoom, but it's unclear to me whether if you just want to listen in, I would imagine you can at least get the phone in information, and we'll work on getting that and posting it on the PCCEP website for people.
I have the same understanding, Sarah. It wasn't exactly clear from the revised order or the statement from Deputy Clerk Ostad. Dan, I don't know if you had a different view of that. It's all a little bit unclear for me.
There was a question from a community member, I'm not sure, JP, pronouns are she, her. I don't know if her question has been answered in the chat. Is the settlement agreement where'd it go? And or the proposed amendments available online somewhere for the public to view? I'm not sure if JP's question has been answered. And then Gloria, we will go with you.
Jared posted the amendments to the settlement agreement in the chat. And I think, no, Zainab, you're saying, I can't hear you, but wait, you're muted, but I see you're trying to share something. You're like, I cannot unmute. Okay. Hang on. Okay, look, Jared.
Yeah,
Jared
I couldn't do that. I think she's asking for the settlement agreement in itself. That's what I heard. I didn't hear that's the full settlement agreement or the amended. So can you explain that a little bit? The amended versus okay, thanks.
Yes, good. That's a good point. So the settlement agreement itself that the court has adopted to date, a copy of that is actually on the PCCEP website already, and we can find a link.
I just posted. I just posted the 262-1 is the current settlement agreement.
Okay, and so that's what we are currently, the court has already adopted that, and all the terms in there are requirements that the city has to meet. The amendments are the ones that the court will consider, so they're in a separate document right now. Now, ideally, if the court adopts the amendments, then we'll have one big, huge document that will have all of them together. But for right now, we have two documents, and if you look at the first one Jared posted, those are the amendments that the court is going to consider. And the second one he posted are the terms that we're already obligated to comply with. Zainab, I appreciate your questions because it makes my answers more clear. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the clarification, Heidi. Really appreciate it. Gloria? You're on mute.
There, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Maybe our listening audience was not aware that they need to be vaccinated before they can get into the courthouse. And you have to wear your mask inside of the courthouse. So if they didn't know, now they know.
Thank you for that, Gloria. That was very key.
Thank you, Gloria. I forgot to mention that even counsel, as we present to the court, will have to wear our mask. And if you want to testify, you'll have to keep your mask on and speak to the microphone. It's a good clarification.
Okay. I hope that's all. If we have any more questions in the comments, Zainab has to leave right now here in a second. We appreciate your questions as always, Zainab. Gosh, I really, really thank you so much. Now, okay, moving on to the next subject, I'm assuming we have everybody is okay with everything. We're with the discussing the proposed PCCEP plan, refresher training on PCCEP creation and purpose. Discuss proposed PCCEP plan. So, Jared or Sarah?
Hi, Jared and I kind of talked about tag teaming it, and he would start by talking about the inception of PCCEP a little bit and how it fits into the whole settlement between the city and DOJ. I would get to more about the management recently of the PCCEP plan and the development and its evolution, and how we got to where we are. And then Stephanie would take it from there with the discussion of the proposed PCCEP plan by the mayor. So if that's acceptable to everybody, let's go, Jared. You're on.
I just one question before you start, because I do have to leave. Are we making any decisions about this tonight? The PCCEP plan?
No.
Okay, perfect. Have a good night, everyone. Thank
you.
Good night, Zainab. Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, I'm happy to lead this off and talk a little bit about the purpose and the history of the PCCEP parts of the settlement agreement. They're in section 9 of the settlement agreement, which I've copied as a PDF. And if I can share the screen, I can go through some of them, the key provisions with you all, since you might not have it in front of you. But to start, thank you, Stephanie. The Department of Justice has a lot of these settlement agreements or consent decrees across the country in a lot of similar sized cities, some in smaller cities. And in almost every single one, there are provisions like those found in section 9 in terms of community engagement. And one of the overarching purposes of these consent decrees and the police reform mission of the Department of Justice is to improve the trust between citizens and the law enforcement personnel that serve the city. And in order to do that, or to accomplish that, I mean, obviously there are fundamental reforms that help that along in terms of using less force, and when you use force that's out of policy, holding officers accountable, doing the types of training that help officers be the best they can be whenever they encounter a civilian, and whether that leads to a force event or a custody or an arrest, or whether that's just a mere conversation. So most of our agreements have provisions about policy and training and accountability and community engagement, because how officers engage the community is important to that trust building mission. There's another concern that we often hear from citizens across the country where we have these cases, and it's the question goes something like, how do we know that these reforms will last? How can we be sure that the reforms will be durable? Our remedies are meant to be durable remedies, not just quick fixes. So while the case is ongoing or the Department of Justice is providing oversight, we want things to be long lasting. And it's really a three-part strategy for that. The first, if we want these reforms to be long-lasting, the first line of defense is really the officers and the supervisors, first line, second line supervisors, and the chief of police to hold officers accountable when they don't adhere to policy and training. I know that would be cold comfort if that were the only way we ensure the durability of our cases to some of you on this call, but it's not the only way. So a second way we try to ensure the durability of these remedies is through community oversight and establishing processes, whether something like the Police Accountability Board, which the city of Portland is going on its own to do, which is fantastic, or other agencies like the Independent Police Review, like the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing, that have these regular forums to hear from, solicit views of the community and solicit views of law enforcement to talk about performance of the law enforcement officers who serve the city. And so, these systems we hope to entrench within the communities that we're operating in. And in this case, it was really designed first and foremost as a community engagement plan that the Bureau would formulate, adopt, and then revisit with the assistance of the Community Oversight Advisory Board, the COAB. The COAB no longer exists. It had some problems. It wasn't really tailored in the correct way, I think, to the Portland community. And we've ended up revisiting that with the PCCEP, which, fixed some of the systemic issues that we observed with the COAB. First, by divorcing it from just the settlement agreement. The PCCEP exists by virtue of a city ordinance that will live on beyond the life of the settlement agreement. And that was an important thing to ensure the durability. And it allowed the PCCEP to be more self-directing, by allowing it to set its own agendas. And that was another fix that was important for this version of the community oversight mechanism. It still retains that essential purpose of community engagement and trying to not only help the Bureau come up with a community engagement plan, which it did, I want to say in 2019, but now that PPB has an engagement plan, it's incumbent on this committee, I think, to check in on that. And the Settlement Agreement and Policy Committee has done that at times. And I think, a yearly check-in or a bi-yearly check-in, however you guys want to decide that is one of the ultimate, products or pieces of work that was intended to come out of the original settlement agreement and is still intended to come out of this agreement. And it has, in terms of it being adopted and it's in the process of implementation. So that was another big fix. And the final one was about membership. And whereas the original COAB had a really cumbersome appointment process or replacement process for members, and it was devised kind of as a blue ribbon panel who would, help oversee implementation of the settlement agreement. And it was harder to replace as attrition wore on. And so instead of the cumbersome process, we vested that power within the mayor's office. This is a mayoral committee. It's not a committee that exists only because of the settlement agreement, but it is a product of the settlement agreement and it's intended to live beyond. So I'll share my screen now and see if you can you guys see this document in front of you?
Yes, Jared, I can.
Okay, I'm seeing some nods. So this is the same PDF I put into the chat earlier. All of this table of contents is linked. This is a court file document. The court approved this version in September of 2021, and it formally exchanges the COAB provisions with the PCCEP provisions. And so I'll come over here to section 9. Apologies for the Roman numerals. Click on it, and it brings me down to the provisions. I've highlighted a couple because I want to focus on just a few of these terms. And the purpose is laid right out here in the preamble. If there's in order to improve the Bureau's community relationships, we think soliciting input from all community members, not just PCEP members, but all community, and helping PPB enhance its community outreach efforts. Like that is the purpose behind these provisions in order to build trust and help policing be fair and reasonable for this community. The PCEP's obligations, or I guess its duties, are really centered on paragraph 142. And the city has to authorize this committee to do 5 things, and it's done that. You are authorized to solicit information from the community and from the Portland Police Bureau about the Bureau's performance, and particularly in regards to constitutional policing. So it is not limited to examining issues of the Bureau's encounters with folks who are in actual or perceived mental health crisis. It is for all constitutional policing. That covers racial discriminatory policing. It covers searches and seizures and arrests. It covers use of force against any member of the community, not just particular members of the community. And really, it could go even broader than that. I don't want to get into a constitutional law lecture. The second thing that you're authorized to do is to make recommendations to the chief of police, to the commissioner, who is the mayor, and recommendations to the Department of Justice for as long as this agreement is in effect. If you want to make a recommendation to me, and this committee has done that in relation to Section 5 and paragraph 89, which deals with the Unity Center. You've asked us to take a closer look at that, and we have. You're authorized to advise the chief and the mayor / police commissioner on how to improve community relationships, and you've done plenty of that. Fourth, contribute to the development of the PPB engagement plan, community engagement plan. You've done that, and you're also authorized to contribute to the implementation of that engagement plan, and you've done that to varying degrees. And finally, receive public comment and concerns, and you do a great job with that. Again, these are the city's obligation to authorize you to do this, and to the extent you want to focus more on D than C or more on A than B, like that's not really our concern as the Department of Justice. We're concerned with the city supporting you to do what you're authorized to do. The next item I wanted to highlight is paragraph 147. So the police bureau's required to collect demographic data for its precincts and give those to the precinct commander so that they can develop outreach programs tailored to their precinct. And that is something where you're authorized to give input on that, and that's something the precinct commanders should consider. That's an important task that you're allowed to do, and if you don't want to, then that's fine. You get to decide for yourself what you really want to focus on. Paragraph 150 is something you've also done. Every year, the Bureau is putting out an annual report, and before they publish that, they have to provide it to PCEP to review and comment. And they've done that in every year that this agreement's been in effect. And you've taken that opportunity to review and provide really good comments. And the Bureau has adapted their annual reports to comments that you've made. I don't know if they've accepted every suggestion, but they've acted very reasonably, in my view, in terms of what they've considered. And there's also an outstanding concern about how they present the annual report in the precincts and to city council. And I encourage you guys to keep considering that, hear from the public and their concerns in relation to city council accepting testimony or not accepting testimony, and how these precinct meetings are curated, how they're scheduled out, because that's an important thing to the community, and should be the conduit for some of their concerns. And this last one I wanted to highlight, paragraph 151, you're required to meet as needed to accomplish your objectives. Those objectives in a more finite way are defined by the PCEP plan. And so that's where the PCEP plan comes into play. It is deliberately part of the amendments that PCEP plan is not laid out in a lot of detail in this settlement agreement, because that made it quite cumbersome to be responsive to needs as they arise. And so now that the plan is outside of the settlement agreement, it can be reworked and tailored in a way that is quicker, more efficient, and really more responsive to community concerns. This other part about holding town hall meetings, you guys do a great job with that. You always co-host meetings with the COPL for their quarterly town halls. You've held town halls on your own as the need arises. And so, continue meeting as needed to accomplish your objectives. The city, has ideas for, where your value is going to be most helpful to them. And that those things are spelled out in the PCCEP plan. And I think that might be a good segue for Sarah. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them at this point. But otherwise, I would say, or Celeste, I see your hand up.
Yes,
Yes,
Jared.
I just have a really brief question here for you, Jared, and it's pertaining to the second category that we're responsible for. And can you move the screen share back with that, please? So is it 149? Was the second one?
This 149 is about the metrics, and PCCEP did review and comment on those metrics, and you're definitely welcome to comment again. I can highlight
Well,
that.
no. I was curious more as to how they were defined, because as you know, with my work in trying to break down the elements of the police stops for pedestrians and drivers, I'm trying to find out what are all the elements that we're obligated to by a settlement agreement, by the state, by the local municipality, and possibly the federal ones. And so when you said that the community has input based on some of these points, I was wondering, are these points that are not only used to provide outreach opportunities for the police, but are these also the same points that are used in demographic and data collection for stops?
So I heard a couple of questions in there, and in terms of paragraph 147, which is what I talked about, that's demographic data for the precinct. So that's like a census data. And if the census data says there's 70% white, 10% Black, 10% Latinx, and 10% Native American, Asian American, other. That could be legitimately used to tailor the type of outreach that might be more effective for the communities who are interacting with police in that precinct. So that's demographic data. I think what you're referencing is the stops data, which I know you've done a great job diving into as part of the racial equity subcommittee. And that obligation really comes from 148. And the obligation runs to the police bureau, and it requires them, their officers, to collect the demographic data regarding any subject of a police encounter. And that demographic data is not limited to these categories, but what we require is race, age, sex, perceived mental health status. And they do collect that, and they need to provide that information to the PCCEP, so that you can, analyze that, raise concerns with the data, come up with solutions to the extent you have ideas, really explore that data. In terms of enhancements to the data, the Bureau reports to us every quarter on what they're doing. And some of it is constrained, I think, by state law. I think Mary Claire Buckley would be the best person to answer, how they go about, collecting the data, reporting on it, considering enhancements. But the basic requirement of 148, the city has long been in compliance with. And the PCCEP has, dug into that data at varying degrees. And I would say, recently, with your leadership, it's done a little bit more diving into it, which is good. It's helpful. But I think to the extent you do that is really up for the committee to decide, or your subcommittee.
Okay. That's one of the things I needed to hear. All righty. Thank you so much, Jared.
Yeah. Any other questions before maybe I hand it to Sarah to talk a little bit about the PCCEP plan?
I think you're good, Jared.
Great. Sarah, you ready to take it?
All right, I'll unmute. Hi. And so the city council as a whole adopted these amendments that created the PCCEP to replace the COAB and to pick up some of the functions and recalibrate to be more to resolve some of the challenges that COAB foundered on. The ordinance actually in 2017 that the council produced was said as part of it, the proposed amendments provide for a new Portland Commission on Community Engaged Policing. And then they said this, which is intended to endure beyond the effective date of the settlement agreement. So I would just say, you know, from the inception, from the very beginning of PCCEP, it was designed, you know, to meet the needs of the settlement agreement, but also to fulfill those very core goals that I think Jared laid out and that were important to DOJ and the city in negotiating the settlement agreement of really increasing the communication between the police bureau and the community it serves, getting better, you know, gathering community input and recommendations that then the police bureau responds to and the city responds to, because we're not talking just the police bureau being accountable to the public. There's other aspects, and then having that kind of exchange of information. And I really see the value. And you know, I have not been around for very long, but I see that there are ways just in the last few months that PCCEP has really been fulfilling that mission. And I'll give you, you know, just maybe a couple examples. You know, when you had Portland Street Response and other community health mental health providers kind of talking about the non-policing response to some of the folks in mental health crisis. That is a really important issue. And that, you know, I think that was in the behavioral health subcommittee. They had a chance to explain and take questions and answer questions from the community about how that whole piece works. And I think that was a really valuable community service to understand this whole effort that we're undertaking here at the city. And then, of course, the other one was when, you know, the RRT letter training came out, and there were, you know, justified community concerns about the content of those materials. You had, you know, first Heidi Brown, and then City Attorney Robert Taylor, and then you had the mayor, and you know, you provided that important forum for those folks to be, you know, answer questions from the community, be held accountable. And it's kind of that two-way exchange of community, you know, ideas and police, you know, information, and just how that's all working together is, I think, shows the power of this model when it's working well. And I think we have to also say, you know, admit that right now you guys are down to a bare quorum. There has been some neglect in terms of, you know, the consistency of city support and staffing. And I think we've been very clear and honest about that. And, you know, that's why we're taking this time right now as kind of a fertile time to think about how to rebuild the strengthening and to really move forward. As part of that effort, you know, we looked at the PCCEP plan. And of course, a lot of you who have been around a while did a whole lot of work on rethinking the PCCEP plan. And, you know, there was, I know that your former chairs, you know, Elliot and Taji and Lakiana and all of you as, you know, members of the committees, you know, put a lot of effort into thinking about, okay, this plan that was adopted as, you know, when PCCEP started, how's it working? What's our mission? How can we shape it better? You know, how is it working on the ground? And of course, as Jared explained, the settlement agreement offers the city that flexibility to reform the plan, because, you know, the kind of the settlement agreement provides some basics, and then the structure of it is in the plan, which must be substantially similar. So that means, you know, we can't go off the rails and do something completely different, but, you know, and, you know, but Jared went through the core functions and the core duties, and that has to be in there. And, you know, so some of the core structure has to be the same, but you have some flexibility in how you do that. And PCCEP did a lot of work in the end of last September, did propose a plan and recommended it to the mayor, which is the process. In the settlement agreement, the process for reforming the plan, it's really a city responsibility to then take a plan with suggested revisions and take it to the amici, run it by, work with the mental health association, work with the Albina Ministerial Alliance, and actually the Mental Health Association isn't in the settlement agreement as an amici in this particular capacity, but we would run it by them, run it by the interveners, the PPA, the Portland Police Association, and so they all get to weigh in, as well as, you know, community members and PCCEP on the plan, and then we have to take it to DOJ for blessing, but we do not have to go back to the court. So as long as, you know, everybody considers it substantially similar to the plan that was adopted, we have some flexibility to change some of the terms. So that is what the process has been to date, and that, you know, PCCEP itself was working on proposed changes, proposed those to the mayor. Mayor's taken a little bit longer to respond, basically, than you know, because of some of the aforementioned lack of staffing. But and now, you know, Stephanie Howard has brought forward this, you know, revised plan, and she can lead you through some of that. I wanted to just give one more kind of, you know, before Stephanie goes through the revised plan that was sent to you earlier this week, and for your comments. The yes, Jared asked whether the city council has to vote on revised. The city council would formally adopt it as part of the revised PCCEP plan, and so there would be a council vote, you know, at the end of the process to formally do that. Which kind of, you know, also, I know there's been a lot of talk on PCCEP and some of it before some of your time, but I think you were all involved on codification. And because the city council said, you know, they want PCCEP to endure beyond the terms of the settlement agreement, you know, people say, okay, we'll put your money where your mouth is, and let's put us into the city code, right? And have us be an actual office or, you know, part of an actual city agency, not just a special appropriation, have us be in the city code, you know, make us a regular part of the city government. And that is, you know, I think that can happen when we move forward with a new PCCEP plan. It might make sense to have that come together as a package, but the PCCEP plan is really kind of the constitutional, you know, it's like, this is what guides the work. This is kind of lays out at a high level, the priorities, the mission, the goals. And the codification is going to be really boring. It's going to be, you know, PCCEP is developed and this is their mission, you know, per the plan. It'll be very similar to that. I mean, if you look at city laws, they're really pretty straightforward. It's going to have 13 members and they'll be appointed by X, Y, and Z, and they will serve, you know, and then see ya, bye. You know, it's really not very prescriptive. It's very high level just to establish it as part of city government. The plan is where the action really happens. And then based on this plan, you have your bylaws, which are a different set of kind of rules about how you structure yourselves, how you organize. You have a set of bylaws. I know there's been some talk about changing them, the structure. That's probably something that could be discussed, you know, as you have a retreat or some of the, you know, how do you want to organize your work? That does not need to be in the plan. There was also in the plan that was submitted or was voted on last September, there were some very specific tasks almost. It was much more of a work plan and deliverables. And that also is probably better left to more of a strategic plan or a work plan for the committee than for this kind of, you know, your founding constitution would plan, you know, the PCCEP plan. So there's just different legal structures and different kind of guideposts for you, and they're laid out in different documents. And so I just wanted to raise that as, you know, kind of so that some of these things is like, that might be later, you know, or that might be a bylaw issue, that might be a work plan issue or a strategic plan issue, that might be that'll be established in the codification, just kind of how to sort all these things out. So it can get a little bit mushy, and we want to be clear and really kind of get off to a fresh start with everybody on the same page, literally and figuratively. So, and now, Stephanie, do you want to explain?
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions about that? I don't want to. Okay.
I do see that Barb had a question about a red line version, and the tricky part of this document is that because we tried to include recommendations and ideas from so many places, there's not really a good red line. We're trying to figure out how we can help make it a little bit easier, clearer what was added, but that's part of what we also hope to talk about with you all tonight. And again, I know, as I said in my email, we sent this on Tuesday, and I know that's not a lot of time, that you all have lives and obligations, and we don't expect you to have dropped everything to read through that and really give it some thought. So we can continue to talk about it as you all have some time to digest. But just to echo what Sarah said, our biggest goal right now, taking the feedback that we've gotten from all of you and from our, the last meeting where we had community feedback as well, we really want to try to help give a clear vision for PCCEP, to help, bring the focus back to the true purposes of PCCEP, and really just amplify other things that you all have been doing really well, and help clarify things that didn't support you very well. So I can share my screen and we can walk through it. However we want to do that, let me pull it up here. Oh, I'm not sure if that's, can you all tell me what you see? Because it's not showing me what you see.
You see the plan revisions.
Okay. So as I'm scrolling, you're seeing that?
And then I do see in the.
I don't think you're scrolling. It's just kind of stuck, but yeah, we can see it. It'd be helpful for me if you could just kind of walk us through it.
Sure. Yeah, let me do this.
It's also in chat, and if you guys open it up on your computers, you can read it. She put the link in chat earlier.
I just want to make it as easy as I can for everybody. So knowing that it's out, it's on PCCEP's website, it's been sent around also, and we can revisit it. If you can see it on my screen, I'll just sort of walk through some of what we tried to do here in putting this together. So in terms of this little preamble here, we really tried to outline the sources of information that we collected, so that it was clear that this wasn't just like a brand new thing that we just put together. This was really an effort to try to incorporate the feedback that we heard, as well as the ideas and the recommendations that have been made historically and that have not been responded to yet. So that's where we're at with the very beginning explanation there. When we go to mission,
I would want to just explain that the comments on the right, you'll see.
I'm having a hard time hearing you, Sarah. Am I the only one?
No, me too.
Okay, is that a little better? I had a sip of tea and I moved my little microphone. The comments on the right, they say S. Ames. That is me. I went through this just to kind of track a little bit of what changed. It's not a red line, but there's some comments about what changed from the baseline, which was the PCCEP produced version from last September and to this one and where it incorporated. So I just, slight explanatory notes on the side is what you can probably, I can barely see them on my screen. And so I don't know how whether you can see them either.
Well, I'm trying to share, sorry, I have 3 screens. So I'm trying to share the right version. Let's see. Is that, I guess at this point, I'm not really sure which screen is being shared. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start here on the screen. I think I'm sharing. We have the Roman numeral 1 mission. Is that what you all are seeing? No?
At the bottom, I see Roman numeral 1 mission.
Oh gosh, I knew that tonight was going to be a technical challenge for me. Let me try again. 1 second.
If you want, Stephanie, I could pull up the PCCEP revisions. I don't have the annotated version, but I could share my screen and scroll through it if you want to remake me the host, and you could just direct me.
I would appreciate that, Jared. There we go. Perfect. Okay. So yeah, as I was saying, that little preamble at the beginning there is just to sort of outline all the sources of information that we tried to pull together. Going down to our mission statement there, what we're trying to do is to really recognize and ensure that PCCEP's independence is clear in the mission here. And to also place emphasis on the role that PCCEP has shared or has, to be a forum for the community voices, which is something that you all have done so well. This has kind of become a place where a community knows they can go to talk about a lot of these issues. And we see that in our returning guests and in the new faces that I've seen, at least, from week to week in lots of meetings. So that is the basis of how we framed that mission. Does anyone want to talk more about that right now?
I have a question. How is this different than what we had before?
So what we did a little differently, I'm trying to look again.
I'm sorry to interrupt. And I just posted the prior mission from the one that's filed with the court. And it starts out to work with the mayor, police commissioner, Portland Police Bureau. And PCCEP's work had really recast it. And this is very much in keeping with the PCCEP recommended version from last fall. Is that your question?
Yeah, I just am wondering, I didn't have an opportunity to read this. What are some of the high points, some of the differences? So what you're telling me is it's kind of taking in some information from before and kind of listing it in a way that might be better to understand. Is that what I'm understanding?
That was definitely our goal. Yeah. And just to make sure that the mission reflects the feedback as well as the core purposes. I'm more than happy to continue walking through line by line on these, but I would also understand if you need a little more time to sort of think about things before we have more of a discussion. I would leave that up to the group.
In terms of time, do we have enough time to just kind of go over it broadly?
Yeah. So in terms of the goals section, a lot of what we're trying to do again is just to consolidate ideas and really make a little bit of a clearer plan so that people know, you know, what the group is about and what the goals of the group really are. So, I mean, these 3 goals that we've identified here, I believe those really incorporated language from both the original plan and the recommendations. But we kind of just tried to tighten up the language a little bit, and we incorporate some expected outcomes in the document a little bit later as well. I see Amy's hand is up.
Yeah, I just, please don't take offense, anyone, but this is nowhere near the original document. And because I did a whole lot of work on trying to separate out what you were saying earlier, which was organizational, what was, procedural, what should we be doing? So this version already reads more clear and concise about what it is we're to do. So it is definitely an improvement over the earlier one, which to me was just, I'm sorry, it was a mishmash of a lot of different ideas, okay? And it wasn't clean. So where this is going, at least when you read it, you kind of know what you're supposed to do as a PCCEP member. Where the other one, to me, wasn't that clear.
And I think, a lot of what the plan is about is the what. And then, as we get to the organizational documents, I think that's going to focus a lot more on the how.
Yes.
So, for example, one theme that I heard a lot of in our conversations was, the lack of a clear structure in the group itself. So the group at some point decided not to have a chair and a vice chair. So those are the kinds of things that we would support you in doing if you decide to put that in your bylaws, so that kind of structure can be fleshed out. Barb?
So what I would like to first say is good job on making a lot of changes. It is just hard to follow how it's different. But looking at this, I would like to make the comment that in the strategies in section B, there's 2 completely different thoughts in there. And is there a reason they can't be separated? Does that make sense?
I'm not sure if I'm tracking
that, or maybe I'm misunderstanding, and it just means that that PCCEP will make suggestions to the DOJ. So where it says PCCEP will facilitate community oversight of the city's compliance, blah, 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 and will make recommendations to deliver more equitable. Aren't those 2 different things?
I think I see what you're saying, but I don't think they're opposing ideas. Is it that you think that those should be just completely separated, or I guess
that was just like what was really I found it confusing, and but I guess I can just keep reading it and maybe it'll make sense. Sometimes I'm too literal. We know this.
That's okay. That's what we want to do is, receive the feedback, because we definitely want to make sure that, we are clear and that everybody, understands this. So I'm glad for you to share that, Barb, and I think that's helpful. I'm going to make a note of that for myself.
Says PCCEP, are you good? Jared.
And then Anne, I see your hand.
Just to Barb's point, though, I think that it might well make sense to separate them out, because this plan hopefully will live on beyond the settlement agreement, and the recommendations, might have to do with settlement agreement or might be after it. So that's another thought in keeping with what you said before.
Great.
Message from Jared too, by the way.
Trying to make notes as I go along here too, because I don't want to miss anybody's ideas. Anne, is your hand up or is that an old hand up? I think I'm going to assume that's not a current hand. Okay, maybe we can scroll down a little bit more. So, Anne, did you want to ask another question? I see your hand up.
Oh yeah, sorry, I had to go get my dogs. They're barking. I just wanted to make a comment. You mentioned that at some point PCCEP decided to change how we operated. We didn't have a chair, a co-chair, that kind of thing. In my mind, that wasn't determined by PCCEP. That was determined by the project manager or director at that time. I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, that's a good point. And yeah, you know, I like that was a consistent theme of feedback that was, you know, not working well for the group, that approach. So, and I brought that up just because I wanted to explain why that kind of excuse me, structural stuff is not in the plan, because it's still coming in the future documents. I didn't want people to think that we were disregarding any of that feedback in the plan itself. Okay. You know, with some of the strategies that we've set forth here, I mean, Jared and Sarah did a great job of outlining how those relate to the settlement agreement and, you know, what the vision was for that. And again, I think what we've tried to put together is something that is flexible enough so that, you know, as PCCEP lives on, there's room to continue to, you know, make sure that these strategies are serving your purpose. But we tried to just hone in on the, you know, the specific strategies, you know, for example, bringing community-based recommendations on policies and training. I think that's something we would really like to be able to have PPB coming and presenting proposed trainings and proposed policies with PCCEP on a regular basis and getting feedback. You know, again, I think PCCEP has provided a great forum for the community that the community really relies on. So we want to make sure that that's enshrined in the plan too. Any questions about the strategies?
No, not at all, Stephanie.
Okay. Expected outcomes. I think, you know, again, here we've tried to incorporate what the expected outcomes that have been expressed by PCCEP in the past, and tried to, you know, make sure that those also that were identified in the settlement agreement, and just generally what I think we hear from our membership and from the public, that those are, you know, the outcomes that we're expecting by implementing this plan. I don't see any hands, so we'll keep.
Sorry, Stephanie, it's hard to find the buttons, but I do, something just occurred to me about something I would like more, like specified with more clarity. And that is, we've all, at least I have in this last year or so, learned the real process of doing like the directives and doing the policy work. And the way it's laid out right now, it seems as though we're always at the tail end of something instead of at the beginning. We're kind of like at the finish line, and, you know, recommendations are, yes, everyone takes them, but the document getting ready to be published is already completed, basically. So I think that kind of needs to be spelled out somewhere in here, that we will participate maybe within the parameters or guidelines of how policy is currently laid out. I don't want folks thinking they can come in here and change policy or procedure because it's a slow process, but it needs more clarity in how it's done. Okay, because people like to contribute during and before something is finalized, not after.
Okay.
I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm making a note to see if we can try to address that in a clearer way. Anybody else? Oh, I'm sorry, Barbara, I see your hand.
Yes, under, thank you, under expected outcomes, I think maybe you're not prioritizing them, but I would like to see decreased incidents of excessive use of force put first. Because what I've been following PCCEP for a few years now, and what I see is that what the city wants is kind of like almost like a better image or easier relationships or something. And I think what's important for the communities is that actual results on the street of, decreased incidents of excessive force, also excessive stops or racially profiled stops. And so I think it would be good to rearrange them to be, so put decreased incidents first, and then be meaningful policy and training implementation and effective community engagement, and then increase trust last, because that's going to be the result, hopefully, of all this.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Anything else on that particular portion? I think turning to the scope of work, again, a lot of what we tried to do was incorporate recommendations and, incorporate the elements of the settlement agreement that apply here. I think it's long, but I think it's fairly straightforward once everyone has had a chance to review it and to think about, their thoughts on it. But essentially what we're saying is, we want PCCEP to be able to develop and provide feedback and make recommendations for community engagement with, between the community and with the PPB, particularly with our communities that are diverse. And that obviously is with a goal to create stronger relationships and improve the trust. We want to make sure that PCCEP has the ability to, the way it says it here is, I think, exactly right, to synthesize information from the diverse communities and make recommendations about policing, including use of force and interactions with people experiencing mental health crises, and issues surrounding racial justice. Again, with the directives, I hear, Amy, I hear your feedback on that, but and so I appreciate it. We'll want to make sure that PCCEP can make recommendations on directives, and that PCCEP does what it has done so well, which is to provide that important forum for the public to discuss those directives and policies.
Oh, I need to make a correction. Sorry, based on what you just said. We are allowed to make recommendations throughout the entire year. What I'm getting at is if a policy is already being finalized for this current year, by the time we find out about it, the input we then provide will be good for next year's version. And people are not wanting that anymore. We got to get current. Somehow our input comes after the fact, and we can input all year long, but decisions have already been made prior to it coming to us. And that's the difficulty when you're asking the community to provide input. and their input is not used within the current cycle, it gets really frustrating to tell people, well, your input's important, but we're working on a final copy and we'll consider it for next year. That's not the way to do it. But that's how business is done. It's everywhere. It's not just here. It's just something I've noticed, that community input ends up being at the tail end of something and not at the beginning of something. That's all I've noticed.
Yeah, I hear you, Amy. I think that your point's well taken.
The rest of it was just
Okay, so I think we can move down to the next section, which is.
Can I pop in here?
Yeah, we had a question, Stephanie.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes.
No
We
worries,
had
no
raised
worries.
him. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of a comment. Was that Amy or Barb that just spoke? I wanted to kind of weigh in and say, I understand that sometimes the public is frustrated because they're not adding input to a current issue. But I think many community members are okay with the fact that their ideas and concerns can move forward. Because it's not possible for everyone to always have access or input on any given subject when they speak on it. And sometimes we have to be satisfied with being able to put input in that will be recognized in the future. We just have to be accountable that information is recognized. I mean, it took a while to get the Constitution. And so, let us not forget that it's okay for things to come in right away and help to act it.
I think what I heard, Celeste, and apologies, there was a little bit of an audio issue, but I think what I heard was that you wanted to acknowledge that sometimes there's just not an ability to implement some of the things that we would like to implement as a community in these processes. Did I understand that? We really can't hear you very well, Celeste.
Okay, let's see. Okay, is this better?
Much
yes.
Better. Okay, so what I was saying is, yes, you were right, pretty close in the summation. The only other thing I wanted to say is when people are asking for input or changes and it's not the correct cycle, we should make records and more or less kind of codify their concerns so that they can be inputted in the future, because more likely they'll still be relevant. And that's all I had.
Thanks, Celeste. I'm not sure if
Stephanie, I think there was Barb. Yeah.
I see hands from Barbara and Barb, but I'm not sure if Barbara's hand is still up from her comment earlier. Yep. Barb, go ahead.
So not on that direct subject, but on the goals subject, because you guys are moving through this too fast for us to digest and even come up with a question before you're on, it's like, any questions? Okay, good, we'll move on. And we just don't move that fast to get hands raised and such. That's one sort of general comment I have. But for the goals part, I really like what Barbara said. I usually really like what Barbara said, and again, I like it. But I'm thinking that y'all might want to also add like education, basically educating the community on like expectations, or educating the police on the community's expectations for that matter.
Realistic expectations.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. I'm sorry, Barb.
Good job.
Okay. And again, like I said, I know that this is sent with short notice, so I am not trying, I don't expect everyone to have had a chance to really think about it. So I think we were back in scope of work. We were talking about directives, and Amy thinks again, oh, poor Tia. So I think the feedback on that is clear, and I appreciate that. What we also envision in terms of some of the work, the scope of work here is obviously making recommendations based on community concerns about PPB practices and training, hiring patrol procedures that lead to improved public safety for diverse communities. I can move down and obviously soliciting feedback from the communities and the diverse communities, and hosting roundtables and town halls at least quarterly, and that those would be open to the public. Again, I think you all do a really great job of that. Okay, hi, Amy.
Sorry, I just don't want to blurb out things when you say it, so I got to raise my hand. To my knowledge, I don't think we can do anything about the hiring and the patrol procedures because that's union. So we got to I kind of would like to leave out a lot of those intricate details that we really have no control over, because even the way it was presented to me, or the way I feel about it, the things that we can work on, we got to get better at doing that first. And some of this stuff we just can't do because it's out of our purview.
And I think our idea here was that, you certainly do get to make recommendations. Yes. And, as you said before, sometimes those recommendations don't get implemented in the way that we want them to, but we want to make sure that you have the authority to make your recommendations on areas that you think are important. And I don't think that this is intended to require you to make recommendations on all of these things. I think we just really want to enable you to do it as it becomes an issue that you want to address. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but it kind of sounds kind of fluffy in the pie in the sky, not realistic. And folks are pretty keen on that these days about being real. I think for me, trust is built upon being real with what we can really do and where the lines are drawn so that boundaries are better served and we can all do a better job because we know the boundaries. There's nothing wrong in that. Saying that this is out of our purview, let's focus on this. You know what I mean? That's what I'm trying to get at, is to get people excited about things we can fix or that have measurable outcomes.
I hear you. Yeah, I hear you. I'm just taking notes as we go along, so sorry if I keep looking down. Let's see. We are looking at trying to find ways that PCCEP can collaborate with the city to collect information about people's experiences and perceptions of the PPB's outreach and accountability efforts. And again, that information that you can collect is available to you, and you can make recommendations about strategies to deal with those. Again, hosting town halls and providing meeting for the COCL liaison to present reviews and information. Barb, did you have another question?
Okay.
Yeah, question/comment. And I love when the COCL comes. I really do, and I love the COCL, but I don't like the not having it be on a schedule that can be predictable to put onto a PCEP calendar for the town halls. And I'm not sure if you guys are planning to change around the governance structure and what have you for PCEP and the subcommittees and what have you, but usually there's a lot going on at a PCEP meeting, and it's a struggle and a fight to get enough time to get the COCL to get run through, because they're kind of long-winded if Dennis
Plan
is here, and
accordingly.
that's okay. But the community always wants input on their reports and wants to give their input, and I don't blame them. And it's always a struggle for time between PCEP members, the community, and the COCL themselves. So indemnifying that it should happen in here rather than how it was presented in the previous iteration as something that could happen rather than should happen. It seems to me that divorcing the PCEP from hosting that, if it can't be, if there can't be a consistent prediction to when it's going to be, which calendar months out of the year. But maybe there's reasons for it to come out when it does and the way it does that I don't understand.
Oh, you
So-
got to read the comment.
So I got to read the comment?
Yeah,
really?
it says they have a full schedule already laid out.
Well, when was the last time PCEP was privy to it?
Yeah.
Are we going to blame past staff? I'm done.
We got Ann Campbell. You have something?
Yes, I mean, I agree with Barb. We've co-sponsored COCL town halls in subcommittee meetings, and we have found that it doesn't work due to both groups really need their own time. So, but it's my understanding that these are things that we could do. They're not what we have to do. Is that correct?
I mean, I think what we're trying to communicate is that these are the areas and the tasks that PCEP has to do. This is the sort of the scope of what that work is. I don't think I don't know that we're trying to prescribe exactly how, down to the detail of how you do it, but just trying to provide the expectations for what is within PCEP's scope of work.
Well, so then maybe I know we're just looking at it tonight, and there's going to be time. There's going to be time for more discussion on that. Is this correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm really looking forward to like the status of the hiring of the staff, and this is. I haven't seen is Mike Myers here tonight?
He could not be here tonight.
So, not to take too much time on this issue, but we've been told that Mike Myers is going to take over the oversight of PCEP. However, I don't think I've ever seen him at a meeting. And so then I'm concerned that the same issue will happen again where, there's staff there. I'm not saying anything about the staff, but without direction and oversight and assistance, different things happen. So it's a concern.
I would just like to say, I mean, I'm not sure, but Mike Myers is the head of the whole Office of Community Safety. He is probably a couple, levels higher than would typically be, staffing a committee, but he did step up after Theo left to actually host and run several of these meetings, which is after Claudia left as well, of course. And so he has not only been to a couple of them, but he has stepped up to really provide the staff support. And so I think you definitely have a commitment from him to make this work and some understanding. And he's also, behind the scenes been meeting a lot and giving up some of his current staff time to help keep PCCEP meeting. Back to this, host the quarterly town hall meetings. This, it wasn't part of PCCEP's required plan. I mean, there's been, when Dennis has his hand up, maybe he should speak to that, but the COCL is required to make quarterly town hall meetings, and PCCEP has provided the forum for those. And we can certainly, as Amy pointed out, we can plan farther in advance. I do know they take some time, but I also think in terms of, the stated, one of the goals in the mission is to provide community oversight of the implementation of the settlement agreement. And, you could take that to mean that you guys have to do a whole lot of work, or you can capitalize on the work that COCL does on behalf of, the city pays him, but he is independent of the city and is doing a lot of day-to-day monitoring, on all the provisions, and presents those things to you. And that could be an opportunity for, real interaction and for the committee and the community to fulfill the oversight role that's envisioned for PCCEP as part of the settlement agreement to see whether it's being implemented with fidelity by the city, by DOJ, by COCL, by everybody who's involved, has duties under the settlement agreement. But I'll let Dennis talk.
Well, thank you. There's really nothing to say after Sarah summarized it so nicely. We do have a schedule, as Amy Ruiz pointed out in the chat, so we'll share that with you so it can be more predictable in response to what Barb was saying. And I'm also apologize for being long-winded. We can promise to be shorter in our presentations, and we plan to do that. And we just really want your input. I mean, we would love to have feedback from you, whether it's a separate meeting or it's part of your full meeting or a subcommittee meeting. I mean, we would like you to have input, and our reports are posted, as you know. So we hope to get feedback one way or the other, because we think what you're doing is so important, and you are part of the settlement agreement for now, at least. So thank you.
Barb, is your hand up? Is the new hand? Nope. Okay. All right, I'll go ahead and move on unless anybody has anything else they want to talk about in that regard. So for membership and selection, we did want to include a little bit of information about the process and make sure that it's clear and that there's no question about what procedures would be followed, at least for that. I think, again, we tried to incorporate what had been recommended previously, but also give a little bit of guidance and structure to that process, so that, ends of terms and things, it's clear what would need to happen, and that we were doing a good job on the administrative side of, making sure we have good records and clear intentions for members. And also, to make sure that we have included our views on having youth members and the importance of that. Okay. I can tell you right now with the application, we're working, again with, Mike Myers' staff and cobbling together as many resources as we can until that person is hired. We're working to update the application to make sure that the links on the website are working effectively, so that we can help with our recruiting and get more members up to speed and get them through this process. So I do want to let you know that's happening behind the scenes. And we're, trying to make it so that this process is actually what it is intended to be, which is accessible and not cumbersome and not confusing. I see your hand, Amy.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could just back up a little bit around the section around people who live, work, go to church in Portland. My concern about that statement is, given that our health system is a tri-county system and our population can't always live here because it's too expensive, maybe some consideration might need to be readjusted around the quality of the applicant more than the fact they live, work, worship, or attend school in Portland. Unless that's something in the settlement agreement I'm not aware of.
I think that's a pretty firm requirement.
Is it?
Is that right, Sarah?
That is something that, I mean, that is consistent for all city committees in, you know, that are staff, I mean, that are organized through the Office of Civic Life or wherever. It has been in the application. I mean, if you are advising the Portland City Council and the Portland Police Bureau and you don't live, work, worship, or attend school, I mean, that's pretty broad. You could live in Vancouver and you know, come to college here, or, you know, come every Sunday to worship. So but you have to have a connection to Portland. I mean, it only makes sense. And part of it also is because you all have a dual role, right? I mean, you're learning and advising the police bureau, but you're also interacting with members of your communities outside and kind of relaying some of this information, or gathering people, or telling them what you're learning about, maybe, you know, inviting them to attend one of these meetings. So, I mean, it is important that be part of the requirement. I mean, it's a very standard provision for any city.
I wasn't sure if that could be, you know, changed. Because if somebody has to move to another location, it'd be a shame to say you can't be on PCCEP.
Well, as long as they're working, worshiping, or attending school in Portland, then that's not an issue. So, they might still have a connection. You can move to Beaverton because you found cheaper housing, or your new partner lives out there. But if you still work or worship here or attend school here, then that's okay. You know.
Okay.
I hope that clarifies. But yes, I agree. You know, thinking narrowly within the city boundaries can be a little bit limiting, which is why they did include different ways for you to be kind of part of the Portland community.
Thank you, Amy. Sarah. Celeste, did you have a question? I'm sorry, Chef.
Well, I think what I was concerned about has already been addressed. I do support the limitations, the geographic limitations, to people who have a very durable and present, you know, like active connection to the city. But, you know, it's already been addressed, and I won't belabor the point.
Thank you. Okay, Stephanie.
Thank you. In the section regarding term and removal, again, we just wanted to provide some clear procedures so that everyone knows what's expected and everyone knows what they have to do if they want to renew their term, and that we have we're making good records of all of that, so that it's very clear how things have, how members have come on and when their terms are over. So that is what we are looking at there. Ms. Gloria?
Yes.
Oh, looks like you're muted.
You're still muted, Gloria.
There. Okay. I had a question about our youth who become members, who it's up, I think up above 3, up a little bit further. Says 18 years. Here it is. Any youth under the age of 18. Well, does that mean that we cannot take them at 15 if they apply? Is there nothing that they can do until they're 16? There it is, 16 to 23.
Well, I'm trying to remember where that age group came from.
They don't have to be members. Can they be able to at least sit in and,
Yeah, so they can learn.
Attend as the public. Yeah, they can attend as the public. I think that 16 might be tied to work laws.
Yeah, that's a good point, Celeste.
I think that the COAB had an age of 15. And I'll just say that this language is just about what is reserved. It doesn't actually say you can't serve if you wouldn't have a reserve spot, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what the city wants to do. I do believe the COAB allowed 15 was the bottom age. I can find that document if you want. But, this is, again, I think we would defer to the city. I don't know the city rules on receiving stipends or, helping out with something like this.
Well, if they couldn't receive a stipend, maybe they could do it sort of like a learning tool. Just sit in, find out how the city works. It would be good for a history class or a civics class.
Maybe they can get credits for it.
Yeah.
I can check on that. And I know that there have been different proposals for age groups. I believe that the recommended PCCEP plan revisions had a different age range. In fact, I think, it said 16 to 23. I saw something else that cut it off at 18, which then I thought, well, no, so
well, 18
we can look.
Still serve. They just serve as an adult.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And so I will, but they wouldn't be considered a youth member anymore.
Correct.
We can look into, if the PCCEP would like to invite people as young as 15. I'll double check, but I don't think there's any reason that couldn't be possible.
Good. Would you let me know who's speaking? Is it Sarah?
Oh, I'm sorry. That was Sarah. Yes.
Okay.
Hi.
Sarah, can you let me know, because I have some emails that I've already told the people you have to be 16, and I will have to backtrack on that, and I don't mind doing it. As soon as you let me know, I will. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
We had a couple of questions. I wasn't sure if Barbara or... Okay. Barb, you had something to say, a question?
Yeah, on the part where it says the mayor can remove a PCCEP member, I'm a little concerned about him having that much, or them, whoever they are at the time, having that much power. Because I think there needs to be some strict criteria. Because it can get kind of political, I think.
Yeah, you mean grounds for removal?
Yeah, right. Yes, thank you.
What did it say in the original version?
There wasn't anything. We need to do this under a bylaws manuscript. This should not be in PC. This should not be in a PC plan. It should be in the bylaws.
And the bylaws revision, okay.
Yeah, we need to get that switched out of here. And actually all the terms and removals and all of that should be in our bylaws. That's where this should go. Like with a description of what we do, a lot of stuff really belongs in our basic bylaws.
And I will say, I think, my intention in trying to put this in here is so that as we, as I get questions about how to become a member and what does that mean and what does that look like, my thought in including it here as well is that it really kind of gives potential members an idea of what the commitments are, what the expectations are, and what the time, the terms are. So I hear what you're saying, Amy, and I think that there can be plenty of details in bylaws about this as well. And Barbara, I understand, but this is a mayoral group. And so I think that, we're identifying it on the outset for what it is. Sarah, do you want to add to that?
Yes, I think, this was deliberately left in the hands of the mayor so that he has accountability, or he or she, as the case might be, but for keeping the membership up and, and obviously then also for removal. If the bylaws, I want to say some of these details that Amy suggested might be better put in the bylaws, such as the application procedure, term and removal, some of those things, those are currently in the council approved PCCEP plan, and they are also in the plan that PCCEP recommended last September. And I think it's probably important to maintain at least the kind of the framework in this, because so that it's kind of consistent with the past plans and carries things over. That's not to say that some of the details might not be changed. And the bylaws could certainly flesh out what it means to be no longer fit to serve on the committee, for example. And I think, because there's accountability to the mayor, I do not expect the mayor would be exercising his authority to remove a member as no longer fit without awareness that, he or she would be held accountable for that as well. And so I don't think this is an authority they would exercise erratically or arbitrarily, just my political sense, but I can see why that might be a question.
Thank you, Sarah. Stephanie, I was just making sure Barbara from Portland Cop Wash didn't have a question. And Barb, you have your hand up. And Gloria, are you done with your question?
Yes, I'm sorry. Let me
You can
take
take
my hand out. Okay.
So Barb, you have a question or comment?
Hear me now? Probably some of both. So I have a suggestion after watching some of the attrition over the last I've been involved since probably about a year before the pandemic started. No, that's fine. All right. Anyway, suggestion would be that if somebody is serving on the PCCEP and they move and leave the area, that maybe there's a grace period of 4 or 6 months that they can still serve on the PCCEP. If that's like a way for somebody to wrap up what they're involved in. I realize they can participate as a community member, but just because somebody leaves doesn't mean they don't still have knowledge and stake in the city. And since there's been issues with getting seats filled, that's one suggestion and thought that I have for you guys. And then the other one I put in the chat, this is from learning from other groups. Please, 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 if you're going to change the bylaws, if you're going to change the PCCEP plan, get everything in line before you put it online into effect. There's nothing like having a PCCEP plan that refers to bylaws, but the only bylaws that have been not codified, but voted on or in effect are the old version and not the new version. So
Stephanie, I wasn't too sure. Tia had a question, but she said the bylaws are being reviewed and updated too. Who is in charge of that?
So I'll be in charge of that, working with Sarah. And again, I think part of the reason, we want to get you information as quickly as possible, to Amy's point before, we want to make sure that you are all up to speed on what we're doing and what we're envisioning, and that we're getting your feedback in the process, not just after decisions have been made, right? So, that's why this is a draft. That's why we're having these, conversations about it. And yeah, as we put together the bylaws and get those before you too, I mean, these all have to work through their own process as well. But getting the plan together first is, that was a resounding issue that we heard throughout our conversations about how we can improve things. And I think that's a really important piece to helping for recruiting and for making sure that we can get new membership so that they understand what this group really does. And so that's why the plan has been our first priority. And then, as we are working to put together the more structural organizational documents, we can fill in, the how on a lot of these statements here.
If I can just add, sorry, Byron, I'm cutting you off. I just wanted to say that the plan itself is a legally required document, and it is the city's responsibility. And it really, as you can see, provides the framework of what this committee is and does. And the city is responsible for that, and we're moving forward with that. The bylaws are more about regulating the PCCEP itself. PCCEP can adopt its own bylaws, and that doesn't have to go, you don't have to check with the amici, you don't have to get signed off by DOJ. So that is a much more flexible and responsive document than this. So that's why it's really particularly important to do this. And we'll be working with, to Gloria's point, the PCCEP members, because you all will vote on the bylaws. You know, we want your input, but you do not have an official vote on the plan, for example.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. And also, when I say we're trying to get you something, I think it's easier to edit something that's been provided to you than to say, okay, PCCEP, you don't have a lot of support right now. Figure out how to, what needs to change your bylaws. Our goal is just to try to help make that a little easier for you right now while we can, and to make your work a little bit less administrative than it needs to be. But yeah, the bylaws are going to be up to you. And I see your hand.
Yes.
Yeah, that was just my question. I thought I heard you say that you were going to put together the bylaws, but we already have some. So you're just going to update them. I'm unclear why you would update them without PCCEP members' input on that.
No, we would not do that without PCCEP members' input. That is in your realm. I think what we're trying to say is to make sure there's consistency in the plan and in the execution of the plan. I think that update is a better word for what I mean. So no, we're not trying to take that away from you or do that for you. We're just trying to help streamline a lot of this and make sure that it reflects what the group would like to see in how they execute their work.
Stephanie, if I could, I don't see a raised hand once I'm the host, so I just physically raised my hand. I wanted to mention something. You made a really good point that it's easier to revise something than it is to create it sometime. And being part of the process of the first PCCEP when they tried to create their bylaws, it was a difficult process. But the PCCEP does vote on the bylaws. And so to the extent, I really appreciate, Stephanie, that you and Sarah will create a revised document to present to PCCEP, and then PCCEP can amend and revise and then vote in a way that gets the majority approval. I do think personally that is a more efficient process, and I appreciate you taking that on instead of just leaving it to the committee to create their own, construct their own bylaws. I think that will be a benefit. Anne and Gloria, I hear the concern, but I think having a draft that you can then tinker with and vote on to will be a smooth process. And I've said it before that the city can't outsource its non-compliance. And so from the Department of Justice perspective, I do appreciate this sort of, the assistance that Stephanie and Sarah are providing in this regard to the bylaws. But certainly it will be the PCCEP vote. And to the extent you don't like what's in there, you can tinker with it or change it, take it out, add things that are missing in your view. But to me, that's how an effective community volunteer group will work. So thank you.
Thanks, Jared. We're down to our last half an hour, so I'm happy to continue going through and getting feedback section by section, but I also don't want to take up every minute of your time when we will have more time to discuss this. And I know that one thing I did want to make sure that we gave you time to do was to talk about your May meeting. Now I know we don't have everybody here, but I think maybe if we can at least have some discussion, unless people really want to focus on this tonight, I think that might be good. What are people's thoughts about that?
I think we should move on and talk about the May meeting, and maybe obviously one of the items would be talking about this again after people have had time to review it and kind of think of their questions and bring them.
Does anyone feel differently?
I agree. I'm sorry. I agree with Ann.
Great.
Ditto.
Okay. Thank you, Jared, for being my wonderful assistant tonight, fixing the technological challenges.
Stephanie, would it be, I mean, for some folks, are very comfortable with, kind of saying, I would change this or I would change that in a public meeting. And some might be better off kind of like in a room by themselves with a thing and kind of, writing out some comments or whatever. If they would like to, should they send comments directly to you in writing and not to everybody, because we can't be deliberating on such things, outside of a public meeting. But that might be another way to get some feedback even before the May meeting, if you'd like, and then we could summarize some of the comments that we got during the discussion and kind of maybe expedite things that way too, if that's an option that some of the members would like.
Absolutely. And I'm, open to conversations with folks if that's easier, but yeah, I think that's for anyone who wants to give written comments, just send those to me directly. And again, we'll, as Sarah said, we can present the comments that we received and talk through that at the next meeting as we progress through this. I think that's a great point, so that, I just want to make sure everyone has the time that they need to process it in their own way, in the way that is most comfortable for them. Before we jump to the May meeting, Anne, can I address your question? A staffing hiring update. Here's what I can tell you. There are interviews being scheduled now. I am hopeful that we will have a good prediction on a start date for a candidate soon. And I will, be working with Mike Myers and their team on that process. They've been doing a lot of work to try to get a good candidate that will be, a good fit for the group. So we don't have someone yet, but there are interviews, the postings have closed. And so that is well underway.
And is it just one person, or are you hiring 2 people?
So there are 2 positions, and they won't both be full-time PCCEP people, but what they're hiring for would be, one administrative person that will be focused on supporting PCCEP, and then another position that will be a little bit more managerial to help support not just that person, but some people that are supporting other city groups as well. So what we're trying to do is layer some support there so that there's, a clear structure and a good backup plan for any of that. And let me also say, I'm fully planning to continue to be at meetings and available as a resource to you all throughout the process, even, after we have staffing. So, I want to make sure that that I'm committed to making sure you're supported throughout.
I appreciate that. I just want another follow-up question. In the past, we had 2 full-time people that their focus was on PCEP, and we had a halftime other person that was helping out. And so I just want to make sure I understand you correctly. So we will have a part-time director of the program, and that person will focus on other things. And then there will be a part-time assistant. Maybe you could walk me through that again.
Yeah.
I'm not understanding.
Yeah, my understanding of it is that there will be a full-time PCEP admin person, one devoted person. And then there will also be a managerial position that helps support that person, as well as some of the other administrative staff that the city hires to support other groups. I think that, one of the things that we'll want to talk about is to try and set forth some really clear roles so that everyone knows what that person will be responsible for and what the method for working with that person will be. So we're working to put all of that together. But no, there will be someone that is dedicated to PCEP.
And so the management position, how much is it, halftime or?
I don't know the answer to that, because there are a few community groups that person will have some role in. So I don't know exactly how that's been broken up yet.
I think part of the goal in moving the PCEP support to Mike Meyer's shop is to have some of this kind of collegial cross support, because right now they do in his office, they've got the Police Accountability Commission, they've got the FITCOG, which, if I remembered what the FIT stood for, but it's the Community Oversight Group for the
Focused Intervention Team.
Focused Intervention Team, thank you. And so there is, when you have more of those folks housed in one shop, they can provide backup. And I know you've seen Mike Myers himself staff some meetings. Julian in his shop is already, helping staff, run the hiring process. You've had Samir helping post things. He is the lead project manager on the Police Accountability Commission. So I think there's really a hope that this will be a synergistic, and there might be, 2 FTE that are called PCEP, but that they will be more collegial, and some of the issues with supporting different community volunteer groups cross-cut. And so I think they hope that all of them will get better support than, Theo and Claudia did kind of in their own little bubble with uneven regular supervision and support from above and from their colleagues. So I think, I'd love to have, Mike Myers come and talk to you about his vision for his group.
Yes.
I think that probably would be helpful.
It would be. Can we put Mike on our agenda for May? Oh.
I'll coordinate and see. Yeah, I will have to double check, because I know there are several different community meetings happening on that night, but we'll make sure that you have an update, hopefully from Mike himself. But if not, we'll make sure that it's a detailed and clear update.
Good.
I don't know if anyone saw Tia's comment that Zainab met with people to prepare for the May meeting. I don't understand why she would do that.
She had planned, if you remember the April 10th meeting, where she had invited some people in to give kind of a big picture look at the history and the goals of the entire settlement agreement and how we got into this and how how well we're doing, kind of a progress thing. It was a really interesting discussion, I thought, and really important. And I think she had planned kind of a follow-up, and Jared and Jonas, the other DOJ attorney, were on the agenda to kind of talk about next steps. And so, yes, I think, as Tia mentioned, she met with some further really engaged people, I believe, from AMAC. And she had already put together sort of an agenda for the May meeting, her May subcommittee meeting, and was, quite upset that, we might not be able to hear from those folks. and the agreement was that that would be something the whole group could benefit from. And since we have a 3-hour meeting, not just the hour and a half that she had been planning for, that we could accommodate some of that ongoing discussion, which is important to, everybody, not just, Zainab and her subcommittee, that made a lot of sense. And so I think that's also going to be from 5 to 8 on May 12th. And so we have time to take care of some of these, these kind of moving forward on the mayor's plan to kind of, put all those action plan to get these pieces together for PCCEP, as well as, moving forward with the substantive work that you all are doing.
Gloria, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. Zainab has a lot of photos that she put together on the history of PCCEP. And I was just wondering if we couldn't include those pictures also in the training that we're supposed to be doing for members. We were going to have, I thought, a review training, or what was it called? I forgot.
A retreat.
A retreat. Thank you, Amy.
Retreat.
And if we could include those pictures in the retreat, going back to the history of PCCEP. I'm sorry, it's getting kind of late, isn't it? It would help.
And those were not just about the history of PCCEP. Those are about the last 30 years of the struggle for, constitutional policing and equal treatment by police in the city. So, they were, I really enjoyed seeing those myself. But I think that they're super important grounding, because unless we know where we come from and why, and honor all the work that's been done since long before DOJ got involved, we're not going to really be able to move forward. And you have to understand the deep harms that have been inflicted in this community and the long memories of all of us who have lived here for a while. And I think it's really important grounding. And I'm glad that she's doing it now. Of course, we might have in the retreat some further kind of, everybody gets trained again on some of the same things, but I think, we can probably make that work and make that interesting and interactive. And I think I'm looking forward to that myself. So thanks.
Have we talked about a date for the retreat?
We're working on that. We're working on finding a facilitator, and we would really like the admin staff to be part of that for all of you. So we're trying to prioritize that hiring so that we can then, involve them in that work going forward. So we don't have a date yet, but that's definitely high on the list.
Makes sense.
Barb, you had a question?
Yep. My question is, are the subcommittees going to be able to resume in June? Because the Behavioral Health Subcommittee meets at the very beginning of the month, and it takes a little while to set one up. So I'd appreciate finding out about that if we can.
Yeah, I think that's the goal, is for, things to resume back to normal and not this little special meeting situation that we have right now. But that is absolutely the goal, for that to begin to resume in June.
Okay, I'm going to hold you to it. Thank you.
I did want to also make sure that you all have time to talk, since Dennis is here, about addressing the COCL report at the next meeting as well.
Definitely is 7:45. We're on, what is that, 9 members' responsibilities of the plan, or?
I think we're going to move away from that. We'll resume those talks and give folks a chance to look at those and think about that. So I think we can move through that agenda item and just finish up with, talking about May 12th meeting stuff. Does that sound okay?
Yes, it does. So all PCEP members, we're going to move on and set up the agenda for the 5/12 meeting.
Okay. So I'm and assuming if we don't have an admin person, I'll be the one that will send out the agenda and the links and all of that. So I've been taking notes on what I'm hearing so far. One of the things we'll talk about is go back to our PCEP plan, right? We'll try to get you a good update on hiring from Mike Myers. And then, my thought, Dennis, maybe could you just speak to the group a little bit about how they can provide feedback on the report so that we can organize the time that is spent on it in May?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So you obviously have a lot of items on the agenda here, so we don't want to take up a lot of time. We could give a very short, maybe 15-minute overview of the report, but I think it's important that you all know the report is drafted already and you should have a copy of it. And it has been released, that fourth quarter report. So, I'd like to leave whatever time we have, mostly just to get some feedback for people that want to say something. And then they'll have another week or so. I believe we've extended, because of the time frame, another week or so to put anything in writing, or they can do it right now. So anything between now and a week after the meeting on the 12th, any comments you have on the document itself, we'd love to hear from you. So, and then we always post the comments with our final draft report, and our response to the comments. So sometimes we say, yeah, we changed that in the report, or sometimes we say, here's why we didn't change it, or whatever. So, I don't know if that helps at all.
Thanks, Dennis. Tia has something. Do you want me to text Zaynab how much time she needs for legacy, or do you want to tell her how much time she has? I am about to fall asleep. I'm assuming that's for Stephanie or maybe Sarah.
Mm-hmm. I'll reach out to Zaynab and talk with her about it. And it sounded like she was probably going to watch back the meeting as well. So I'll just make sure that I've reached out to her and get her feedback about what that timeline looks like and how we can accommodate it. Oh, Tia.
You're on mute.
Sorry, I'm so tired. I thought I'd make it okay. My first surgery, I bounced right back, but my second surgery, it's really hit me hard. I'm so tired.
We're glad you made it.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed.
Thanks for the meeting.
Well, thank you all for being here. If there's not anything else, then, if you all want to talk more, feel free.
There was only 4 items that you mentioned.
Yeah.
PCEP plan, hiring, COCO report, and Zaynab's report. So those are okay.
That's what I'm
There may be
hearing.
something more coming later, Gloria. So, we can just adjust. But that's a good point. Yeah.
Okay, then.
Yes. I move we say goodbye.
Hold on a second. Please.
Go ahead, Amy.
I didn't realize the mic was on and I was trying to type really quick. Do you guys want to still have the report outs from the city and the mayor's office and the police department and the other people that were on the list that weren't the subcommittees at the beginning?
What would they be reporting?
Excuse me? What would they? Did you just ask me what they would be reporting?
Yes, I did.
What they used to report, and even more so, what's going on in the mayor's office with regard to PCEP and public safety? What's going on in the Portland Police Bureau with regard to public safety and changes and this and that and the next?
Well, the reason I asked is because Stephanie's telling us what's going on in the mayor's office with regard to public safety. But yeah, I see your point about the police.
I'm talking, wait. But I'm talking about making sure that on the agenda, there's a time for Stephanie to talk about the mayor's office. That's where I'm at. I'm not even at getting people to attend. I'm at getting people to share what's been going on. So I'm not trying to waste people's time. I just wanted to bring that up because it's been part of the past. How about that?
Well, she has a good point. She has a good point. And if I may, Stephanie, we've been getting reports from the police department, and we haven't had a chance to respond to those reports. But it would be good if we knew what was the uptake on them. We had 2 police reports that we received. They were forwarded to us from Judith. And I'd like to know what's happening with those reports. And the mayor, it would be good to have a report. And Stephanie, you can do that, or Sam Adams, or whomever. I'd like to know if they've ever filled all those vacancies that he told us about in the meeting and how things are running now.
I will put these on the agenda for you.
All right, then. That's what I'm talking about.
And often, to follow up on recommendations that PCCEP has made. So that's something that's going to have to get built into the process too, that I have not heard y'all talk about.
Oh, didn't hear you finish with the codification. There's a part of the codification that we didn't even go over. So maybe we can put that on the agenda too, and we can talk about that.
Okay.
I'm happy to put it there. Maybe what we can do is have the leave space, have these items on the agenda.
Yeah.
And if we run out of time, then we'll carry them over.
Yep. That's good.
All right.
Does it sound like everybody's got everything out?
Got it. Thank you, Barb.
Thank you, Byron.
I want to thank all my PCCEP members, Amy, Gloria, Celeste, Tia, and our groupie Barb, and Anderson, and myself, and Zainab. And I want to thank Stephanie Howard for her hard work and her ear to listen to us, and Sarah Ames and their accuracy, clarity, and fairness when they speak with us is very important.
Yes. Thank you all.
If that's it, if anybody else have anything else to say.
Will somebody answer me in the chat, please?
Beg your pardon, Barb?
Will somebody answer me in the chat about which reports Judith sent out?
Judith sent out?
They're in our email from the city.
I don't get your emails.
Oh.
I don't always get them forwarded to me.
Okay, well, now see. I'll call you.
No, you can't call me. My phone is broken.
Well, can I call Amy?
Amy works. I won't be home.
Whenever. I'll send a message.
It's all good.
Okay.
Carrier pigeon.
Okay. On that note, I would thank you all for joining the PCCEP April 21st, 2020 meeting. And everybody have a good night.
Thanks.
You as well. Thank you.
Take care.
Take care.
Recording stopped.